right. I still love that intro, Paul.
Yeah, no, that's why. Who wrote that music?
I don't know, some cool guy.
All right.
You realize it's almost been a year that we've been doing this, eh?
Well, when it is a year, we have to celebrate.
We should. We'll try to think of something.
Yeah, because we started talking about the idea you started talking to me about the idea in August last year, and I was like, and now that's the best idea ever.
I don't know if it's the best because people still don't know who I am. They know who you are, but they still think I'm some and guest.
No, that's not true.
Okay, then you just somebody called me Kale.
Kale, right? That's a shout out to John William. Fab's name is not Kale.
Hi, John. What did I want to say? Yeah, I think the first episodes are around October, so we'll have to look into doing something special.
Yes.
Cool. All right.
We can do a big conference for 20,000 people.
What's that, sorry?
We can do a big conference for 20,000 people all together.
Yeah, that's. I don't know how that would add value, but let's do it. All right. Let's get serious. This is a serious matter. We're going to talk about sales processes. So a few weeks ago, we talked about how to design your sales like a sales process for SaaS, and we talked about the demo and stuff like that. And so I thought it'd be interesting, some of our, as I'm going through the stats, actually, realizing some of our more interesting episodes, not more interesting, but more listened to episodes are where you were coaching on cold calling and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be fun to do kind of a live exercise, but this one on the sales process. So, I mean, I know you do this for clients, and I'm not expecting like a copy paste so that people can just go ahead and do it. But if you're just a small freelancer and you can't afford like premium Paul services, I think it'd be nice.
Freelancer, you're allowed to listen. If you're a big client, you have to turn off the pod.
Yeah, turn it off right away. Stop listening. So anyway, but I thought it'd be interesting that so step one today would be, what are the things that I need to think about when I'm obviously I'll be your guinea pig again. What are the things I need to think about when I'm designing my sales process? And next week, we'll do, I don't know if we're going to do a live implementation in HubSpot. I think that could get a little boring for people, but maybe I'll implement some of the stuff we talked about, and you can kind of go through it with me and critique what I've done. Well, something along those lines.
So full disclosure here. When you're implementing, when you're really building a sales process for someone like a company, you need to ask a whole bunch of questions to find out what it is that you're actually going through, and what is it that you're finding out to be able to help your client. So,
Gotcha.
Full disclosure, we're going to be spending like 20 minutes today. So, it'll be very much an overview. Yeah,
obviously that's, you coached me on a couple cold calls. I mean, normally you would be doing that weekly with the salespeople you coach. Yeah. So I'm very aware that this is just an indication, kind of a hint or some tips for somebody who's like,
No, and I'll go through at high level what they are. And basically, some people split it up into, 6 steps, 5 steps, 4 steps, 3 steps. I spoke to one person recently, which you know about, that split it into 23 steps.
Awesome.
And, that can be a little intense. What you're really looking to do is to have, I would say, probably 4 to 6 steps maximum. And then you have sub steps or milestones or things that need to be done for each step, reminders of what you're doing and what you want to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, sorry, and I'll interrupt you because that's what I do sometimes. But that's what I've noticed is like some sales teams, especially sales teams that haven't been coached, or maybe they don't have a senior sales leader, they kind of almost use their sales process as a project management tool. So, next step, like contact customer service to see who's going to be in charge of this account, like things like that. So I think that sometimes can make it artificially long and complex. Yeah.
And your sales process, in my opinion, should only be about the sale. So it should only be about what you do from the start to getting and closing the sale. And then if you've got recurring business and building business, what you need to do, not recurring business, sorry, but growing business or upscaling, and then what you're doing about that, which is a smaller subsection of the sales process. So,
right.
So you're not project managing. It's until okay, now Mr. Client, this is your client, it's sold now, boom, it goes into another software or another portion where you're going to do project management or whatnot.
Right.
You know, the important, let's just be really simple for a second. So when you meet someone, for sure, there's an introduction, right? So what's the introduction, right? So you need to introduce yourself. And also, you've heard this a million times, there's the discovery, right? What is it that discovery? So you're asking the client questions to find out, one, what they do, two, what their pain points are, and how you can help them with the pain points, right? So that's got to be in your sales process, right?
Right.
And then you got to dig deeper and find out, you know, when we talk about pain points, well, how do those pain points relate to their business objectives?
Mm-hmm.
What are their business objectives? What motivates them? What's the motivation to buy? What's the real reason behind this person doing business with you? So that motivation to buy, right? And then you're dealing with some pain points, which you found out earlier, and then you're finding out the real motivation to buy. And how can you help them solve those pain points?
Right.
What is it that you're going to do to solve those pain points? Once you figure that out, well, then you're talking about your product. You're talking about what you're going to do. You're always tying it into the pain points. You're always tying it into the motivation to buy. And then you're simply closing by showing them that you're going to solve their problem or create their opportunity according to what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're closing, and then that's it. So your sales process, you know, in a nutshell, encompasses those things. Now, what I do normally, and we can do this a little bit with you, is I ask someone, okay, well, now tell me about what your sales process is now. So we can do that now, Fab. Let's have, you know, hypothetically. So what's the first thing? Yeah.
I said I would be a guinea pig, so there you go. I'm opening up my.
You can be a real guinea pig, or you can, you know, be you can play a fictitious role. But
no, let's be open. Let's be honest. I mean, look, I'm obviously my situation is unique. I'm a freelancer. Well, unique is not the same as the companies you normally work with, but you know, so things are a little messy. Let's call it that. I also do the thing that I should not do, which is I don't actually go look at my CRM and the steps that I feel I should be taking when I
call somebody. You're showing people how to do.
Well, thankfully, I don't advise people on sales. So I could be as messy as I want. Yeah. So you know, the first step obviously is, like you said, like some discovery. So the first thing I'll normally do is kind of like, what's going on, you know, what's happening kind of I try to focus a bit more on the marketing stuff. And obviously like within the HubSpot stuff. So I've gotten pretty good at identifying organizations that use HubSpot. And so then when I do manage to speak to some of them, my first step is to really just understand what's their current situation, how are they using the platform.
Hold on, let's break then that into two subsections. So let's say your step one, let's call your step one, you're going to do your research and you're going to do your call, and you know, just for fun's sake, at the end of your first step, right, you manage to either book an appointment or get some interest, right?
Yeah.
So, or to find out that you'll be able, maybe you'll go to step two right away if they want to talk to you a long time. But let's say step one is you're doing research and you're talking to them and you're finding out at an introductory level if there's interest. We'll call it at the end of your step one, you've got interest. They have interest in hearing more from you. So the first part of that step is your research. So tell me about your research.
All right, fine. That's easy enough, I guess. So basically I use my number one.
By the way, normally I'm taking notes of this, and you know, and then I'm going to come back and help you build your sales process.
It's okay. This is recorded and live, so we can always go. We can go back to it anytime.
This time you're doing the work. You're going to be taking notes. But
yeah, exactly.
So your first.
So the research is pretty simple. I mean, like I said, I'm just myself, so I don't need like massive amounts of leads. But I use LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and there's a feature in Sales Navigator that allows me to search for companies that use HubSpot technology. So I don't know if LinkedIn uses a partner or they have their own scrapers, but basically they go online and they scrape for some HubSpot code and they tie that back to the company. So the first I find the organizations that use HubSpot, then I'll identify who the marketing leaders are within those organizations. And then I'll do one of two things. One is I'll connect with them on LinkedIn. And two, after some research, if I can find like more contact information other than just what's on LinkedIn, I'll reach out to them and call. Like some people are just impossible to find information for.
Up there. So how do I turn that into a sales process? So I would say, research on LinkedIn, on if they're using HubSpot. What other parameters do you have? Because I'm sure there's a lot of companies using HubSpot and you're not calling everybody. There must be some other parameters. What are the other parameters?
Yeah, I mean, I'll look at it. I mean, that's where I'm more wishy-washy. I tend to look at maybe the size of the marketing team. Has the marketing team grown or not?
Okay, good. So size of marketing team and fluctuation in marketing team.
And what, sorry?
And the fluctuation in the marketing.
Yeah, because that's it. If I see the team is growing, then there's a good chance that there's people internally that are taking care of it. If the team is stagnated or decreased, then there's a good chance they might need an extra pair of hands to help out. Okay,
so size of team and growth in team. Or in growth.
Yeah, so I look at that. I'll look at revenue as well, although revenue is not always the best indicator. Anyway, on LinkedIn, I find like that's been a bit more all over the place. Like their data is a bit more all over the place.
So here's the question: why are you looking at it if it's not really a good indicator?
By curiosity more than anything. I mean, I'll look at it because if it feels way too small, then I'm not going to approach them.
So then revenue is important. So you are looking at revenue. Okay.
Yeah, the only reason why I said it's not consistent is I've spoken to some people where on LinkedIn it said like they had almost no revenue, and the reality is they were a much bigger organization. So that's why I don't always think.
Okay, so you also decide whether the information makes sense. But let's say in the perfect world, when you're looking at revenue at LinkedIn and everywhere else, what's a typical revenue? And then you should probably put a category. Okay, looking for companies with revenue streams of this much, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what I've been doing more recently, and that's just to make it a bit more manageable, is I've broken it down by region as well. So I'm focusing a bit closer to home. That's just because but that's just making it just more manageable.
Targeted. Okay, so you're targeting a geographic region as well.
Yeah.
Okay, what else are you doing in research just before you call them?
So then that's it. So once I've identified the companies, then I try to find the marketing leaders there. And if I find that there are good marketing leaders, then I'll research them online to try to find extra contact information.
Okay, how do you determine if they're good marketing leaders or not?
Well, if there's like a VP or a CMO, in some cases, marketing director. It's just that in some organizations, marketing is just, or the people that are on LinkedIn anyway, are just like marketing coordinators and stuff like that. And I just feel like they might not be the best fit. But to be honest, I haven't even tried them out. Maybe they're a better fit, and to try to speak with the business leader as opposed to the marketing team. Okay.
What else do you do? Or are you ready to call now?
If I find their information, then I'm ready to call. If I don't, well, no.
Okay, and we've talked about your elevator pitch, so we won't talk about that again.
Yeah.
Assume then when you call them, you give your elevator pitch. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then what are you looking for after you've given your elevator pitch?
I'm looking for somebody for who the pitch kind of resonates. So somebody who's maybe not 100% satisfied with what's going on LinkedIn, on HubSpot, sorry. And, would want to have a further discussion about getting an extra pair of hands to help out.
Okay. So we won't do this for every section because it'll take forever, but okay. So now once you have that and you've called them, how do you know if they're interested?
Well, a bit like the cold calling role plays that we did, a few months ago. If they agree to talk, basically.
Okay. So if they agree to talk, and okay, so they're giving you pain points, maybe.
Yeah, for who that's what they resonate. Like, I mean, I could maybe do a bit better, stuff like that. Like if I'm starting to see that, there's kind of cracks in their armor or whatever, then I kind of push for a secondary meeting. Okay. But if it's really like there's just a complete shutdown, I mean, I'll try to do some of the handling that we talked about a few months ago, but that's it. If there's no cracks in the armor, I mean, I'll kind of leave it as is.
And, I talked about interest, right? It's a huge thing, right? To know that your client's interested. Now, obviously there's some very obvious things. There's some very obvious things you can know to see if the client's interested. They talk about their pain points. They talk about their business. They talk to you freely, right? So they're open and they want to talk to you.
Yeah.
There's also some less verbal, more animalistic traits you can look for. And that an interest. So what's that? Well, it's their body language. Are they freely talking to you? Are you pulling information away from them? You sort of want to get a feeling, and you'll get a good feeling. If you're talking to someone, you light them up. Well, you've probably said something or asked them a question that's turned them on. Said, "Oh, I like the way this guy thinks. I want to talk to him because I think he can help my business." Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you want to find out. Like at first you want to find out some pain points. Now you don't ask them what are your pain points, right? So you ask, what questions to ask. You can ask some open-ended questions to find out what their challenges are to go a little further. And then of course, if this was a cold call and you're talking to the person for, you told them you talked to them for 5 minutes, well then you're going to end that first conversation and say, there's interest. So that to me, you've completed your first step. I used to say it's when you book your next appointment, but since we're doing so much stuff online and on the phone, you might be going directly in your second step. So it's when you've got confirmed interest that the person wants to keep talking to you, right?
Right.
So
like end of step one would be kind of, there's an interest.
That would, to me, that would be your now what's important in your own personalized sales process is what are the things, the research you talked about, the way you're going to give your elevator speech, and you're going to find out if this customer deserves to go to the next step, right? If you're lucky, I'm not talking about you specifically, but let's say you're selling a product or a service, you may already have a feel for what they thought they were willing to invest to fix this problem. But that's not, we're not there yet, right?
Right.
Okay, and then let me just walk you through, because what I would then do, I'll take a typical 5-step situation. So to me, the first step's done. So what you've done is obviously in preparing and doing your research, you've pre-qualified your prospect. So there's a pre-qualification that's important. And then after that, you've got to, sorry, I'm going to get rid of this call. After that, you're going to do your research. You're going to make your phone call. You're going to find out if they're interested. So now they're qualified to go to the second step, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe, it was a terrible call and it didn't go the way you went. You think, okay, well, that's it. So now you're disqualifying, or you're putting them in, I'll call them back in 6 months, or you're putting them in, I'll call them back in a year, or whatever, whatever the situation might be. So now they're qualified. So now step 2, you're digging deeper, right? Now this might be a continuation of your first phone call if you're lucky, or it might be a further phone call, it might be a further meeting. You may have done the first step in a couple of steps. You may have done your research first. You may have found out some information. You may have tried to call a few times. You may have gotten a call the first time. The person said, "Look, I really can't talk to you right now. I'll talk to you later. And then you call them again. This, your first step can take you 6 months. It can take you, or it can take you, 15 minutes. Depends what you're selling, right?
Yeah.
And then step 2, what you're doing is you're digging deeper. You're really finding out how those pain points affect the business, right? Relative to what it is you're selling. You're finding out their motivation to buy. What is it that drives them? What is their business motivation? Is it a personal motivation? What is motivating these people in their job? And you're also finding out, am I really talking to the decision maker? Ideally, you want to shoot for the decision maker in step 1, but sometimes you find out that it's not really the decision maker that I'm speaking to, right? I'm actually speaking to someone who is not the decision maker. I'm talking to someone who is an aid to the decision maker.
Yeah.
So then you need to make sure you're talking to the decision maker.
Right.
And the other thing you're doing in step 2 is when you're talking about the pain points, the motivation, all these things you're discovering in your steps. So relative to your own product, how do you discover the motivation to buy? What are the pain points? You also want to identify what kind of people, what kind of person is that decision maker? Am I talking to architects? Am I talking to marketing VPs? In your case, would be marketing VP. Am I talking to directors of marketing? Am I talking to actual owners of companies? Because maybe that's where I need to start to make sure they're happy with their current situation.
Yeah.
And then after that, what you're trying to do, and this is, I think, pretty generic in most sales processes.
Yeah.
Once you have the pain points, once you have what are these things, what are their needs, and also it might be what are their desires, right? It might be, this might not be a problem or it might not be a solution. It might be a desire, something that they want to build.
Yeah.
You're looking for that too. And then you're also looking to find out what's the urgency. What's the urgency to fix this problem or create this opportunity, right? And then some people at this point are going to be, some people at this point, if you're doing it properly, you might be able to quantify the value of the missed opportunity or the problem, or the value of the opportunity, i.e. if I can fix my marketing and get it done properly, I know that that my product could sell 10 times more. Well, what does that mean? It means I could sell $1 million more a year, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know for marketing, it might be too specific, so maybe product related or service related.
Yeah.
In my mind, right, in step 2, in this kind of process, once you've quantified, once the person's quantified the value of what it is they're looking for, you're finished step 2, right? And again, you're qualifying, right? So if at this point you're asking questions on motivation, desire, expertise, urgency, let's say, for example, the urgency is like, this is nil, and the quantification, the value is only going to be necessary or in a couple of years. Wow.
Yeah.
So maybe you're disqualifying the opportunity now, or you're really putting it on the back burner, right?
Right. So basically it's like, I think we could do more, we could do better. But then there's like, but so far, it's been a crazy year and we're kind of, it's not the priority right now. Like we're just,
and often it'll be, they have other priorities that are more pressing.
Yeah.
So listen, I'd love to fix the marketing, but we need to rebuild the manufacturing process because, we're now selling masks instead of chairs for concerts. Right? So then that, okay, you're not at the top of the list. You need to find that out. You need to find that out pretty fast, actually.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep going. But
I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes. I'm doing your job and taking notes.
Well, yeah, and you and I can talk afterwards. And then the next step is they've quantified it, there's a problem, or there's an opportunity. And now what you need to find out in the third step, to me, which is really, really important, are they willing, they want to fix this problem. So they're ready to invest in a solution, right? Yeah. And now you're finding out what the decision-making process is, right? So now you knew who the decision makers are, but now you also want to find out what the decision-making process is. You want to find out if there's competition in there with you. You want to find out their timeline. You may know that it's urgent, but you want to know the timeline. And you want to know that they're really willing, at the end of this step, that they're really willing to fix the problem. It's like, yes, we will fix the problem. We have to fix this problem.
So I have a question for you, though. Yeah. Like the step one, so step one and step two make sense. Not that step three doesn't make sense, but step one and step two make sense. Often it might just be two different calls, and one could be just like an intro call, a cold call, whatever. The other one is more kind of the discovery call, lasts longer. I get that. But step three, is that a separate meeting? Like, how do you present?
Oh, no,
step three.
Theoretically, all these three steps could be one conversation.
You're right. I get it. But if you're going to create different steps, they're like, if I'm a rep, and step two and step three to go together, shouldn't that just be one step?
No.
Okay.
No, because sometimes they're really spread out and there's a lot of info there.
Yeah.
So quantifying in your head, that means, okay, I've put the problem together and I've quantified it, right? Okay. Right. It might take a little while for someone to say, okay, I've quantified it, but am I really willing to fix it?
Right.
They may need time to absorb it, or they might be willing to do it right away. Listen, if it's all done in one shot, well, then you're going to the next step.
Right.
But there's separate things that you're doing because being willing to invest in fixing the problem is different than having quantified the problem.
Right. So basically, am I right in not assuming in understanding that the difference between step 2 and step 3 is that sorry, the difference between step 2, not the difference, but the reason why we're splitting step 2 and step 3 is that we're in a way kind of giving the person you're speaking to the chance to kind of process that initial conversation.
You know why I separate them? I'll be 100% honest with you, because that step 2 would be huge.
Right.
But you know what? It could all be in one step.
I don't. So then, how do you do? You're like, hey, great, thanks for your time. Listen, my next step is to have another conversation with you.
No, they don't know that it's seamless to your client. It's seamless. So let's say I'm talking to you and you say, we're having a conversation. Oh yeah, I really want to increase my sales. I'm trying to increase I want my business to be 10 times the size of what it is in 10 years. And, I'm the decision maker. I need to get going quickly. So you got the urgency. And, I look at all this, my missed opportunity right now. If I keep going the way I am now, I'm only going to be 5 times bigger. So now you quantified it, right? And then you keep talking and I really want to get this fixed. Well, you really want to get this fixed. Are you, and are you willing to, okay, so that means they want to fix it. All right, you're already in step 3. And, I've talked to a few of your competitors, and they're saying this, that, okay, who the competition is. And I want all this to be done by the end of December. Now, when it needs to be done by. And, and I'm willing to invest. So you've just done step 2 and 3. Boom.
Right. Because the thing that I'm encountering sometimes is that, step 2 makes sense. I mean, I'm relatively decent. Well, I mean, with mixed results in terms of finding urgency and stuff like that, I should say. But then it's like for everybody that I speak to, they're like, okay, cool. We've had a conversation. Can you just send me like the proposal now? So is it just that it maybe in a case like mine, step 2 and step 3 should be one? Maybe it's just like there's, like in some cases, maybe it does take 2 steps because there's a lot to unpack. But in my case, maybe there's just could be 1 step.
I think step 1, 2, and 3, if you can do it in one conversation, it's awesome. It's perfect. Yeah. Well, you might need 10 conversations to do all this.
So then how do you present, and I know maybe we're getting a bit off track, but how do you present I need to have more of a conversation with you?
Well, because you don't have all the information. If the person has to get off the phone, or you have to get off the phone, or you have to leave the meeting, and you don't know the decision-making process yet, and you don't know the urgency, they haven't said to you that they really want to fix this, you haven't gotten their commitment to go forward, to want to fix this problem, then you haven't finished your job. And then you say, look, I need to book another appointment. Can't you just send me your proposal? Actually, I'd love to send you my proposal, and I will, but I have a few more questions to ask you that are really, can you send them to me by email? I'd rather not. It needs to be a discussion.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that's why in your steps, you need to have these little reminders.
Gotcha.
Now, some people call them milestones, but it's really a reminder to say, did I ask this question? Did I find these things out? Right?
Right. And I'm going to let you finish, but what I'm really finding interesting, and maybe this is obvious to every salesperson, but is that the way you see your sales process is that it's kind of almost a go, no go to the next step, right? Like, have you done these things?
Absolutely.
No, you can't move forward. You know, like, and that's where the project management thing kind of falls apart, because it's like, well, I could still ask customers, like, to go back to my initial example, I could still ask customer support, who's the person going to be in charge of this account? Like, it's not a go, no go situation.
Okay, I'm going to give you a secret right now. I'm going to tell you a secret.
Just you and me.
It's a secret, just you and me.
Nice.
Is that the most important thing throughout the sales process, if you're talking to a lot of people, is that you're always qualifying, right? And the thing about qualification that is really nasty, but true for every human being, is it's more and more important to qualify as you go along, because your time becomes more and more valuable, right? Mm. But sometimes we keep them in our sales funnel because we don't want to lose them, but really we should be disqualifying them.
Right.
And often, stupidly enough, because we're human beings and we act like we do in a relationship, we don't want to ask that girl if she likes us because she might say no.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing in business. You're not asking the right questions because you're afraid of the answer. You're afraid you're going to find out, you know what? I don't need Fab because my marketing's fine. So you just don't ask the freaking question. But you need to know if they're committed to solving the solution. You need to know that they're willing to invest. You need to understand their timeline. You need to understand their urgency. Now, they might not know themselves, and you need to ask questions to find out, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Client, if all this could get done, when would you want this to be done by? Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, good question, Well, it affects this, that, and that, so I guess I need it to be done as quickly as possible. Some people won't ask those questions because they want to keep it in their pipeline. They think, well, maybe the client will become a little nicer and decide to just buy from me. Now,
or maybe they'll have a pain point that it pops up at some point, and then I'll be able to jump on that.
Now, there's one thing I got to say here, super important, right?
Yeah.
So, in all of this, right, you've only talked about yourself a little bit in your introduction when you've done your cold call, right? The first time you just told them briefly. I'm Fab Calando from Fab Industries, Fab Marketing Industries, and I help people with their marketing needs, specifically to using the marketing tools in HubSpot, right?
Yep.
That's about the only time you've talked about yourself. So this conversation theoretically has lasted, let's say, step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Step 1 to 3 has theoretically lasted half an hour to 3 hours. Mm-hmm. On average, let's say about an hour. But you haven't talked about yourself at all.
Right.
And in certain complex sales situation, you might even talk a little further, but you haven't talked about yourself. So the really important thing here is you've not talked about yourself. You've not talked about Fab, and you've talked about the important things that are important to the client. What? Their desire to fix this thing, their needs, their motivation, their prime reason to buy. Are you talking to the decision maker? What's the urgency? Have you quantified the value of what it is that you're trying to achieve, Mr. Client? Are they willing to invest? Are they willing to go forward? What's the decision-making process when it really boils down to it, right? Decision maker, decision-making process. Because a decision maker might be flinging this off to other people.
Yeah.
There's competition involved, right? How do you find that out? By asking questions. By asking the right questions. Woo! And asking open-ended questions, you're also establishing yourself as an expert, as someone that can be trusted. Because you're talking about them. So the more you talk about them, the more you get them to talk about them, the more you're finding out, which is good because you're trying to sell them something.
Right.
And the more they're going to say, hey, man, this guy gets me, and you're establishing your expertise.
Gotcha.
But these are all the things you need to do. And then, boom, once you've done all that, they want to fix this thing. They know the problem. They know how much it's costing them. They know when they want to get it done by. You know what the decision makes. Okay, now you're willing. Now you're ready to talk about yourself.
Right.
Now you're ready to close, right? So what does that mean? Well, are you closing? You're kind of closing. What you're doing, you're going to talk about your company. You're going to talk about your proposition, your value proposition, how it ties in to everything that they're looking for, right? Your solution, right? And then you're closing. But the close, I like what Keenan says. You're not closing. Anyone who closes or wants to become a better closer is a bad salesperson because they haven't asked all those questions up front. But if you know all that, like if you're talking to me and you're trying to sell me a car and I don't have a car, I've been riding my bicycle to work in the winter and I need to and I'm getting late to work all the time and I've got $10,000 in the bank or $100,000 in the bank to find the great solution. It's going to be, well, when do you want me to do? Okay, I'm going to get the car to you by tomorrow so you can start, because you're going to be able to start making, it's no longer, do you want the car? What can I do to close you? You ask all the right questions. It's there. The close is like poof. It's there on silver platter. There is no closing. It's just you tying in your value proposition to the problems. And then if there's objections, and there always will be, it's like, well, when I asked you earlier is that still true? Yes. You might have to bring it to light because a lot of people have resistance on wanting to fork out some cash.
Yeah.
So you might have to bring all those pain points that they mentioned to you back to light. Is this still important? Is this still an urge? Yes. Well, then you'll find out. And if there are objections, you'll find out really what they are, right? Well, I told you I had $100,000 in the bank, but really I don't have any money. So, okay, well, you can't find the car. And boom, hardest thing to do, but you're disqualifying. See you later. Thank you. You're a nice person, but you don't have the money, so I can't sell you the car.
Yeah.
Right? So so the last step is really the most easy step, and it's what most people do. They call up, they introduce themselves, and they go right into sales mode.
Yeah.
They don't even know what the pain points are. They ask a few questions, they find a little bit of pain point, and then boom, sell. No, I can help you. They hear one pain point. Oh yeah, I'm having problems on the market. Hey, I can help you. I can do this. I can do that. Go here. Go there. Do that. It's like, whoa, and they're selling and they're just talking. When they say they talk twice as much as they listen, they're just talking, and they're not paying attention. The hardest thing as a human being, any human being, is to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Right now it's easy for me. I get to do all the talking. So but you have to listen to your client. You got to find out what their real pain points are. And then you could, and if you've done all of that, if you've done all your steps 1 to 3 really properly, then your value proposition becomes really easy, right? Because you found out, and it's funny, I heard something else. I'm going to quote Keenan again. I'm giving a little star. He said something recently. If a client asks you something specific about your product, and he says, never answer the question. Find out why they want to know why. Of course. If you start asking me, well, why does this car have these windshield wipers? Well, next thing you should be saying, well, are windshield wipers important? Yeah, because I'm driving 90% of the time and it's always raining. Well, okay, I'm going to make sure there's windshield wipers on your car. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, and I remember like a long time ago, I spoke to a potential client and they kept asking me like, would you be interested in coming to work for us full time? And I was like, okay, like, why do you keep asking that? Like, I'm a freelancer, I'm on my own. And it's like, well, we've actually, to be honest, we've had a lot of like bad experiences recently with a lot of freelancers, and we just don't know if we're ready to go down that route again. I mean, we're speaking to you because we like your profile, we like who you are. It's just we're just really reticent about onboarding a freelancer.
And you know what? That was a great question. You asked, well, if you just said, well, I'm a different freelancer than the other. No, it's like, well, can I ask you why?
Yeah.
Why you want to hire someone?
Yeah.
And you need to listen to the answer, which we often don't either. This is a whole other discussion, but little parentheses.
Yeah.
Asking open questions is wonderful. Asking the right questions is wonderful. But if you have just a list of questions and you're not listening to the answers, it's going to turn into an interrogation.
Yeah,
and no one likes to be in an interrogation. But we'll make that a whole other podcast because we can talk. You and I can talk about hours on that. I know we've talked about it before, but
yeah.
So that's important. Okay, so step 4, this is when you're, quote unquote, presenting your solution, presenting your offer, presenting the opportunity, how you can tie into all those wonderful things that Dave talked to you about for the past 2-3 hours, right?
Yeah.
And then I have a 5th step.
Okay.
I put a 5th step in there because, okay, you've sold, it's good, you've gotten the deal, you've signed the contract, that's wonderful. But in a lot of businesses that I'm dealing with recently, there's the sort of the first sale, and then there's recurring sales, or there's upselling that you need to do. So then what I say to people was, you need to do the follow-up, you might do some maintenance, you might do some, and then I say rinse and repeat. So what you're doing is you're going back through when you're trying to sell another process or another service or another product, you're going through that step 1, 2, 3, 4 again for maybe another division or someone else.
Yeah.
And what I also add in my sales process is asking for references at each stage. Remember, we've talked about this in one of our previous podcasts. When you've had a good from your first conversation, your first good conversation.
Yeah.
Not just, hello, we're going to talk next week, but your first good conversation. At the end of the conversation should always be, hey, this was a great conversation. Thank you very much. Do you think there's anyone else in your network or people that you think would benefit that are not your competitors that would benefit from this conversation that we've had, right?
Yeah.
And
it's true. Like a long time ago, I worked for a company and they actually brought in a referral consultant or whatever. And one of the biggest takeaways he said, it was like, is really you have to processize when you're asking for the referrals and how you're going to ask for them and stuff like that, is because a lot of people just toss it in. Like, oh yeah, like, do you know anybody? But he was like, no, if you can identify, obviously there's some better moments to ask for referrals than others. Like when you're reminding them that they're late on paying an invoice is probably not the best moment to ask for a referral. But like that's it. After you've had a great conversation, after they've decided to sign on, after they've been with you for a certain number of time and stuff like that, so processize the asking for a referral.
Yeah, you got to processize it. And I think the mistake a lot of people do is they wait till they've been their clients, but really there's no better time to ask for a referral after a good conversation, because you're not saying we're clients yet. You're just saying maybe someone else can benefit from this conversation. Right. And if you've asked some good questions, and your client's gone aha a few times, that's a really good question, or anyone who tells you that, and again, a lot of people have said this, and Keenan said this recently too, but I've heard a lot of people say this, whenever someone says to you, oh, that's a really good question, you're good. When someone says that to you, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Find out, or that, that you're a good question means that you're making them think about something that's important to them. And you want to get that reflection. And that's going to come from your questioning strategy, right? Now, if you notice in all this, I never say what questions you should ask, because your questions should be built on what the person's answering you and what your service is, obviously.
Right.
There's no list of killer questions, right? There's no questions that a salesperson should ask. No.
Yeah.
There's information that a salesperson needs to go get, right?
Right. And there's different, it's like all roads lead to Rome, right? Like there's a lot of different ways of figuring out urgency or like their real reason to buy or whatever. There's there's a lot of ways to get to that. And so and what I find, and I know myself, like having had, other than our conversations, little sales training, it's kind of comforting to like look at those lists and be like, okay, like these are great questions. I should ask that. But then you get into that trap, I should say, of, well, you absolutely want to ask the question that way. And so you're trying to gear the conversation to ask it. And it becomes awkward or it's like, okay, you're done the conversation. Like it ends organically. And instead of like saying, oh, like in my mind, like, oh, I forgot, I still don't have the answers to these like elements. You kind of like throw in that random question at the end. Oh yeah, I forgot to ask, like blah blah blah. And
that's where I think if you do that, and that's okay. Well, there's a way I think of doing that, and that's okay. So let's say you've had a really good conversation with someone, and you realize, oh damn, I forgot to ask this question. You can say to them, by the way, thank you, great conversation. good. And I just realized there's something that I didn't ask you that I'd really like to know that would help me in figuring things out,
Yep.
And then, rather than just say, hey, I didn't ask you a question, right? So, and if it's really smart, you might be able to segue into it, but maybe not. Some Stephen Colbert, the great comedian, has some, or Seth Meyers has some really hilarious, horrible segues. So if you're a good comedian, maybe you can do a horrible segue. But it's important in your sales process to sort of break down. And this is what this can be your homework. We won't do this next time live, but this can be your homework. Go through everything I said to you and really break it down. Like, what are the things that I do, and how do I processize that, or how do I put that in my sales process? Is this really an important part of the sales process? Because, do I really need to do this?
Yeah.
There's things your revenue is finding out the revenue up front is a great thing, but and you're saying that your sources might not always be great. Well, then maybe you have a couple of sources you're checking.
Yeah.
So I don't want to keep our viewers on too long. They have to go to bed or for dinner.
Go to bed.
Or have their go sell. They need to go sell.
They need to go sell.
Or they need to go, build a great marketing plan.
Yeah, I mean, obviously marketing has limited, this is really the territory of sales. I mean, there's some things that if you have two groups that work really well together, and that should be your as a leader, that should be your goal, to get those two teams to work very well together. I think there's some things that you can do. If a rep has disqualified somebody at step 2, for example, well, what can a rep do with that lead or that contact? You know what I mean? Like there's some things you can do, but I mean, obviously the sales process is really the area of sales. But there's some things that we can do, and we can get into that another time. But
Fabio, one thing you say, this has been much more sales, but if you have a very good sales process and you're working in a larger company, it becomes a lot easier for marketing to help you if they know exactly what the sales process is. And they might say, well, we can infiltrate ourselves here.
Yeah.
We can help you with research. We can help you with all the, outbound marketing, which will make them know us when you call them. So there's all these different levels. And so if your sales process is very well defined, then they can come in and plug in, and you can plug into their thing too. So, their marketing process, your sales process, how do they, merge?
Yeah. And, depending even on depending on the volume that you have, like how many leads, how many deals and stuff like that you're working on, if you're using like HubSpot sales and marketing, you can build lists and target very specific ads to people that are step 2 in your sales process and stuff like that. Not to get the information, but just to keep them excited about who you are and stuff like that, but very tailored to that conversation. So there's a lot of things that marketing can do. And so the more,
I know, that's why I'm talking to you.
the more precise it is, the more marketing can do something with it. But when it's messy like mine, there's not much marketing could do. I mean, if I was a business and I had a messy sales process like that, there would be nothing much marketing could do with it.
And let's face it, often when you're alone, it is more messy because it's all in your head.
Yeah.
Right. But it can help. It's good for you to act more as a reminder, right? Because maybe, oh, geez, I didn't ask this question, or I didn't find this out. I need to go back and find out more. So it'll be more a reminder of what it is that you need to do, rather than being, the sales process you're giving to your manager, who is you, you're giving to your VP, who is you, and you're giving to your president, who is you. So, it's interesting. But
all right, let's leave it at that. I have a lot of work to do. Let's next week we can do a step 2 of this.
Just gonna go now.
What's that, sorry?
So I have no more work to do. I'm just gonna go sleep. No, of course not. We all have work to do.
It is 3 p.m. in the afternoon here. It is time to go to sleep. My next step is to kind of build this. And I don't know, we'll brainstorm a bit how to present it and how to go through it. But I think
we can do that. And I think we should also talk about keeping in a podcast to come. Maybe not the next one, but the one after that. We're going to talk about not turning your questions into an interrogation.
I like that one. All right. Thank you, Paul.
Ciao, Fab.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye.